This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about Bowser retiring from Nintendo, EA going private, the official Xbox ROG Ally pricing, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to the new Beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 104, our 2-year episode. I am your host, the man who has images of PC parts and builds dancing across his eyes, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who is hoping and praying the rumored Lord of the Rings game is based on the Rings of Power, Justin, better known as I Am Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Well, now my day's been officially ruined. But not too bad. Saturday I spent a good deal of time. Well, I've had this idea going back and forth in my mind. I decided, finally go ahead and get back to this. There was some music I wanted to work on. It's something I worked on back in college, but while I had written all the notes down, I didn't have any type of instrumentation going to it, so I was working on that over the weekend, and I got all of the parts down, but I'm not entirely certain that I like some of the blending sounds, so I think I'm gonna try to tweak some things here and there. But I think as far as the general stuff goes, I'm very satisfied with how that turned out. But yeah, I'll probably mess around with that some more. But at least the basic stuff I've gotten taken care of so far. But yeah, there was that. Sunday, I did some gaming, but in addition to that, I was working on a project for my uncle for a slideshow. So I was working on that. I realized that the program I was using to work on that, because instead of just being a PowerPoint, he needed an MP4 video, so I was just gonna put that into my editor, OpenShot, and work on that way, since that's how I normally make videos. But I think the issue I was having is the fact that because there were so many images that were being processed back to back in such a relatively short period of time, it was a bit of a problem, because I went off, because originally I was working on my laptop. I said, all right, I'll move on to my other computer didn't have OpenShot installed, so I went to my other laptop, which was more powerful, and I said, yeah, I'll just work on it there. And then I was still sort of having a problem where things were loading a bit slowly. I mean, granted, the video was going to be running for about an hour long, because it was going to be looping constantly, so I think that was really the big issue there with having all those images going on. So eventually I said, you know what, I know there's one program that will work, so I went back to my old laptop, and I pulled out Windows Media Player, Windows Movie Maker, because I know that thing, I've made PowerPoint videos on that before, and that turned out well, so I was like, all right, cool, I'll do that. So I finished that up on there, gave it back to him, and he sent me a message later on saying that he liked it, so I'm thrilled that worked out well. Also, this doesn't tie directly into any of the games, but I'll mention this here. After you mentioned this several weeks ago, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and try to use this over the weekend, and I tried gaming with the Steam controller just to see how it was, because I used it 1 or 2 times in the past, but after one period where using the right touchpad as the camera was weird, I just stopped using it. But I used that, and it took a bit of getting adjusted to, because the placement of the face buttons is just much further down than pretty much any gamepad controller has it. So it took a bit getting used to that, but I mean, it's okay. It's definitely something that I wouldn't say is for everyone per se, but not too bad. I mean, I think it really, as far as if you're using it outside of um like a game, it definitely works tremendously as just
Hmm.
like a basic sort of like mouse thing. Because I would say if you have a PC set to a TV in a living room or something like that, I think that's great if you're trying to just easily navigate menus and stuff and
Hmm.
navigating the desktop without having to use a mouse or anything like that. I think it works very perfectly with that. I mean, I used that and said, wow, this feels very natural to use with the touchpads, especially for using the left touchpad to scroll. I mean,
Hmm.
just circular motion scrolling, that works great. Um, so I think it works excellent in that capacity. I think it just takes a there's just a bit of a heavy curve with using it
Hmm.
for basic gaming and stuff, but not too bad overall. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I've been up to.
All right. Yeah, the Steam controller is one of those things that I feel like if you find the right thing to use it for, it can be really good. It's just that for traditional games that use a normal gamepad, it doesn't work so well. So I feel like it would be really good for games that don't have native controller support, that are like more mouse and keyboard kind of games. Would probably work pretty well for
Mm.
that, but I haven't tried it for that. The only thing I ever really tried it for, I tried it once for Prototype. I tried it on Destiny 2, which it didn't work on at all. At least not back then. It might work now through like Big Picture or whatever. Because I was probably like 2017 I tried it, but um and I tried it on Dark Souls, and it did not work well for any of those. So I haven't really given it much of a shot. Maybe if I find something that's like more of a turn-based strategy or real-time strategy or something like that, it might work better for that. But those are the kind of games I typically play, so I don't know. One of these days, I'll find some game where it can be useful and actually make use of it, because otherwise it's completely a wasted purchase. But it's at least an interesting novelty. So yeah. In terms of my week, trying to think. Apart from the stuff I'll talk about that happened yesterday, I think the only thing really of note was that Saturday I attempted to make some homemade ramen with like the ramen eggs and stuff. It did not go well. Um, so first of all, with the ramen eggs, so they're supposed to be soft boiled, and then you marinate them in like a soy sauce mixture of stuff. And I mean, like when I had it before, when we had like some authentic ramen, it was like those things were amazing. They were so good. It's like, soft boiled, so that the outside is like well marinated in this soy sauce blend, and then like the yolk is just ever so slightly gooey, but the egg white's completely cooked and everything, and it's like delicious. But when I tried to make it, so I followed the instructions on how long I'm supposed to cook, did not cook the white all the way through. So initially I had issues with that. So I tried a second batch, seeing if I could get them to cook by cooking longer. It was better, but it still wasn't quite right. And so I didn't even bother after that. And because I didn't let it then sit in the marinade long enough, they didn't quite absorb the flavor. And so it was just kind of like very surface level. You could barely taste it. But the really problem was the ramen itself. So I got some miso paste, because like my favorite ramen is the Sapporo Ichiban ramen that's like miso flavored. It's like really really good. Way better than like Top Ramen and Maruchan and all that. Um, and so I was trying to do that. I'm adding the miso paste to the water to try and get that flavor. It's just not quite coming through. So I add a little bit of beef bouillon too, to give it a little bit of extra saltiness, thinking that should do the trick. It seemed like the broth tasted pretty good. But then I made the mistake of cooking the ramen noodles in the broth, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to cook the noodles separately and then drop them in the broth after they're cooked, because otherwise it absorbs the broth to the point where you basically end up with no broth. And I'm not sure if it was because of the ramen noodles combined with it, or if it was just that it ended up being saltier than I thought it was going to be anyway, but it was way saltier than it was supposed to be. None of us really liked it very much. It ended up just being a huge waste, and basically the whole thing was a bust. So, um, I need to look up an actual recipe of how much of the miso stuff to use for it. I still have a bunch of it. And I'll use it for other things, even if I don't end up using it for ramen. So there's another recipe or two I want to try out that uses miso. But yeah, it was a bust. I think if I tried to do all of that again, for starters, of course, I'm definitely going to make sure, one, that I look up how much miso paste to use for the broth and just follow a recipe instead of faking it. Number two, I'll make sure the ramen noodles get cooked separately from the broth and then just tossed in and not cooked any further so that you have the distinctness of the flavor. It's actual ramen and not just noodles. And then three, I will cook the eggs probably like instead of the 7 to 8 minutes, because it said 6 minutes if it's room temperature eggs, 7 minutes if it's out of the fridge. Instead, I would probably cook it more like 10 minutes for an egg, because even if the yolk ends up completely cooked all the way through, then at least I know this is how long it takes for it to cook all the way through, and then in the future I can do it to where it cooks for less time and ends up better. But also, then at least I don't have to worry about anything being undercooked and just not right. Because, like, I don't mind so much if the yolk is a bit runny, even though it's a little harder to cut that way. But when the white is still a little bit runny, that's when it's a problem. And yeah, and of course, then on top of that, I also have to actually let the eggs marinate for overnight so that they have a chance to fully absorb those flavors. So yeah, you live and you learn. But I also ended up, yeah, I guess I was same day. I made some more pork sausage, which, or maybe I did that last week. I don't remember. I guess I probably was last week. I think I cooked some up. Anyway, I did that, and I decided to make homemade Japanese curry roux. So it was mostly good. The flavor was good. The roux did not call for any salt. The idea is you're supposed to add the salt separately because it wasn't trying to fully duplicate like the pre-made roux cubes that you buy, but it's the idea is you're making the roux cubes so that you can just use them like you would with the ones that you buy from the store. I think the flavor was there, other than the fact that it only called for a tiny bit of cayenne pepper. I just left it out completely because I figured half my family doesn't like it spicy anyway, and it's easy enough to just add some cayenne pepper individually. It was just kind of hard to tell exactly how much I would need there, so that part was fine. But the problem was that I put too much salt into it when it came to it, so it ended up being a bit on the salty side. Now, it wasn't so bad to where, I mean, it wasn't as bad as the ramen, where it was way too salty. It still was fine enough to where everybody ate some, and both my two kids who actually like the Japanese curry had some for their lunch today. So it's like it's not terrible. But what I'm probably going to end up doing with that is I will take some of the leftover curry, add some more water to it, and then make up a second roux. Since the roux is not salted anyway, and that'll help to balance it out because that way I can offset some of that saltiness and then also still get all of the curry flavor and help it to retain the thickness it needs to have. Because if it's super thin, then it's just like soup instead of being that nice, thick, beautiful curry that it usually is. But overall, I mean, like, it wasn't completely a failure. It was much better than the ramen, but still needs some tweaking. I need to figure out the exact amount of salt, or at least be a lot more careful about how much I put in there. So there's that. Now, the big thing, of course, I've already mentioned this to you, but for people listening, I got my new graphics card yesterday, on Monday. And, of course, I got it, like, right before lunch, and lunchtime I had some stuff I had to do. Oh, that's right, I had to get all the veggies and stuff cut up for the curry, because it takes a while to get all that done, and I wanted to get it done well ahead, so that way when it came time to actually doing dinner in the evening, I could just throw everything in and then get the computer put together and all that while it's cooking. But unfortunately, I found out that the graphics card, being a much newer graphics card, was too long for my case. And so I kind of went back and forth on what exactly I was going to do about that. I realized, though, that the living room PC I have, um, which has a much newer case that I bought 5 years after the one that I had been using since 2016, that case was long enough. If I moved the fan, fan in the front of the panel, if I moved that up, then I could fit the graphics card and it would fit just fine. And on top of that, it also has compartments for the power supply and everything, so I could actually do much better cable management. And so it looks beautiful in comparison to my previous setup. So the short version is basically I had to take apart both the living room and my computer and swap out all of the insides between the two. So basically now the living room computer, apart from the fact that it has a different power supply and different storage, is essentially what my computer was before I upgraded this year, because it's in the original case and everything. So I couldn't take the, this other case doesn't have room to put in a disk drive, because I had an optical, just a regular DVD-ROM that I used basically just for ripping CDs more than anything else. Occasionally some physical games in the past, even though that's rarely been something I've used it for now. So it's in the living room PC. If I really want to rip music, I can do that. I do technically have an external Blu-ray drive, but the thing about it is that it has a micro USB connection on the back, and it's like garbage. Like, that thing is loose and terrible, and so the connection is kind of inconsistent. But if I'm desperate, I can at least try using that for any time I want to rip a CD. Otherwise, I'll just deal with not having it. But it at least gave me an opportunity to get everything together. Thankfully, everything basically came together without a hitch. It was just like, initially when I got the living room PC put back together, I think something was not plugged in right. I don't even remember which thing it was. Something wasn't plugged in right. And so initially it would start to boot up and then it would shut back down. Or no, the first time it wouldn't turn on at all, apart from just the motherboard lighting up, which told me it was getting power. I don't remember what it was. Something was not plugged in correctly. Easy fix. Then it would start up and then bloop, bloop. And then I figured out from that, all it was that I think it was just one of the RAM sticks was loose or something. Maybe the GPU, I can't remember which, but I just pushed on each thing and then turned it back on, and then everything turned on, no problem. And it's running great. And so now, the only game my kids have really played on it so far is Minecraft and Ratchet and Clank. And Ratchet and Clank is definitely running much better now. It's running as well as it was when I originally was playing it on that PC. Since now they have the 2080 Ti in there. I haven't increased any of the settings, but I did notice where Ratchet and Clank before was getting, I think typically 40 to 60 was pretty average for the frame rate. I think I messed around with settings enough to where it was getting more around the 60 range, but after putting in the 2080 Ti, it was getting a locked 75 frames per second, which is what the refresh rate of that monitor is. So, pretty cool. But anyway, so that was the only problem I had with that one. Pretty simple, easy fix. And then putting together mine, the only problem I had initially was that I accidentally plugged the CPU fan into the wrong port, which wasn't a big deal. It was just like, it would get to the BIOS, it said CPU fan not detected, but the CPU fans were running. And then I opened it up and realized, because I knew that there was two different plugins for fans. There's a CPU, and I can't remember where the other one is. I thought the CPU one was on top, but I misread it, and the CPU one was on the bottom. So I just moved the plug, and then everything was working just fine, and it's been running great. Haven't had any problems otherwise. Runs really... I can't tell if what the fans for the case, or if it's the fans on the graphics card that run really hard when I'm running games on there. But the few things I've tested have all pretty much been making it run pretty hard. This case doesn't have as many fans in it, and I think I might have another fan somewhere that I can put in there, but it's also more ventilated than my other case was, so I don't know. either way, I didn't really have any problems. But yeah, that's about it. Just as I mentioned in my intro, I basically had images of PC parts and PC construction going across my eyes the whole night, and it took me a while to get sleep, and then even when I slept, I didn't sleep the greatest. So, but I think I'm past that point now that it's been about 24 hours. But yeah, that's everything.
Nice. Glad you were able to, your GP finally came in and you were able to get that after some trial and error, probably situated, and now your build has finally been completed and you have every part you were trying to get in there. Just out of curiosity, I happened to notice it was a fractal design. What case do you have for it?
I don't remember. I bought it 4 years ago, so yeah, I honestly don't remember. It was the one I bought for when I built the guest room computer. So,
all right. And then I was just something I thought about. I know some of the newer GPUs have this. I don't know if it's on. I don't know if it's like brand specific or not.
mm-hmm.
But does your GPU have a little BIOS switch? I know that some do. If you want to like set it to, as far as like with I think this fan speeds, if you want to have something that's more quiet, or if you want to have something that's
I think that I might be able to set that in the BIOS. I just haven't really messed with that. I've hardly been able to do anything with the computer since I put it together, because I finished it like around 9 o'clock last night, and then I basically just barely got to use it a little bit, and then mess with it a tiny bit this evening, just mostly to record a couple things for the podcast. That was it. But yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that, see if I can do that. Because yeah, the fans were running really loud. It was shocking. I mean, especially because like none of the games I played were using that much of the GPU. I mean, one of them may have been using more. It didn't have like a benchmark or anything that was showing me exactly how much it was using. But I know the other one was using like a little over 8 gigs of VRAM, and that was with everything. That was even when I had everything running at 5K or rendering at 5K. So 8 gigs out of 24. Yeah, but anyway, we'll get more into that.
Well,
later.
now you've reached 25% of the PS5 Pro's maximum power.
I know, man. And I had to spend so much more money to do it. I mean, gosh. All right. Well, speaking of games, I mean, apart from Expedition 33, which I'm very much looking forward to discussing, what have you been playing this week?
Alright, I'll just quickly get this one out of the way. Played some more Halls of Torment. Again, just still doing grinding for achievements. I've gotten some more done. I think I've now only have about 69 left. So I'm getting there. But just gonna take some more time just to knock them out. Take a lot of runs, obviously, but making progress there. Yesterday I played some Satisfactory with some friends. It's been a long time since I played with them, just because I've been busy on Mondays and just too tired afterwards, but also just jumping back into this game, and wow, I did not remember much of anything that's been going on. And also when I booted up the game, and I realized that where I had last played, because when you exit a server, you stop exactly where you were at. So I was somewhere out away from the base we were at, and somewhere out in the wild, and I'm just thinking to myself, okay, where am I at? And then there was like, I said, oh, okay, I was looking for some item, and then there was a beast around there that I had not seen before, and it was just hectic. And also I realized that the mouse, so I started using a new mouse, and while using it for simple desktop stuff is fine, it's much more sensitive in gaming, and I realized
Mm.
that, and I was like trying to aim, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is this is very hectic, and my aim was just horrible. But thankfully I wasn't doing too much combat stuff where it really made that much of a difference. um they also, my friends had also been doing a whole lot of stuff while I was gone too, because they had made several new bases. They've eventually got nuclear energy going and stuff, and they had all this types of stuff figured out and new plants established. And so I was pretty much just trying to help out with trying to further the progress we're going, as far as just getting our space elevator fully established. So we were working on that, trying just to get some new resources going and whatnot. But that was pretty much it. Although there was one comedic thing that happens where we have these sort of like vacuum tubes called hypertubes that are set up, and essentially they propel you or any item you put in there at a high velocity. However, if you loop them around, you can build up more momentum. So that way you can go further, which helps if you want to get from one end of the map to the other end. Unfortunately, if you get trapped inside a hypertube for long enough, it's hard to get out because you're just building up more momentum. And I unfortunately happened to walk by and actually got sucked into one. And first I was trying to not panic and try to figure out, all right, how do I get out of this thing again? And I kept hitting every key and nothing was working. And then I remember what key it was, but I kept tapping it furiously because I was trying to hit it, because you have to time it where you're supposed to change and get out of the exit tube. And unfortunately, it happened too late. So by the time I was launched out of there, I kept going so much further that I essentially was reaching space. And at first I thought I could slow my speed down to as far as I could maybe try to jet myself back to the planets. But I went too far, and I essentially died at that point. But before I respawned, I took a quick screenshot just to show my friends, this is what happens when you stay in a hypertube for too long. But that was fun stuff. But yeah, then there was this one game called Expedition 33 that I played, and I finally finished the game. Well, first off, before I even get to that part, I went back and I finally got the last few Pictos I needed and grinded them, so that way I could make my Simon slaying build for my team. And it took me 2 attempts because the first time I forgot to equip 1 Pictos, but it definitely worked. Like, it worked very well. It's just like 7 moves you do is just Mael debuff Simon, then she goes into Last Chance. Monoko breaks Simon, then he buffs Mael, then Ciel buffs Mael, and then she just passes her turn to Mael, and then Mael just finishes him off. So it definitely worked out well, and I mean, it's great for getting that achievement, but I really now just want to go back, and since you can replay against him, I definitely want to go back and just fight him fair and square again this time. And I mean, I might keep a few Pictos on just because I was like, oh, that's kind of cool actually. But other than that though, I'm gonna go back to my usual style of stuff. But it definitely was good in that end. But that final chapter, wow. I mean, first off, I did not expect it to just start off the way it did, and I mean, it was great. And I mean, just like the transitioning from one area to another with the music, it almost in a sense reminded me of Dancing Mad from Final Fantasy VI. Not because of like anything in particular, but because of the fact that you have the different parts of the fight, and then the music just transitions into the next part. And so I liked that about this area, whereas, you know, when you're in one part of that zone, it plays one part of the music, and then, you know, once you move into the next one, it changes, and then it just keeps going on, and eventually you get to the end. And I just thought, this is beautiful right here. And then, well, also, I will say this. I actually went to this area slightly before facing Simon because there was actually one Pictos that I needed from an enemy there before I actually went for the build to beat Simon. So I did actually have to go there earlier for that reason. And I realized when I went there how OP I was at this point because I was essentially one-shotting enemies, and even when I went to this one enemy who was essentially going to be a mini boss type of deal, I unintentionally, I mean, I wasn't doing anything. I mean, I probably didn't need to, but I essentially just used, I think, I can't remember what move it was, but it's just like one move, it wiped out the entire enemy team, and I just thought, all right, that was something.
Yeah.
And then when I actually did face the final boss, yep, the same thing happened there. And then there was, of course, like a phase 2, and this time I said, all right, I'm actually going to pull my punches a little bit and not use anything that's just hard hitting right now, just because I just want to see what happens. But yeah, and then so then after that, the actual ending of the game was just wow. I mean, and I you know, I had to make some choices, and I felt conflicted, but then, you know, I made the one choice and I was like, all right, that sounds fine, I'll do that. And then after doing all that and seeing the end of the game and doing all that, I said, you know what, I'm gonna go back to my older save and see what happens if I, you know, make a different choice. And I did it, and then I realized I think I made the right choice the first time around. So all in all, the game has just been outstanding. And I mean, when I first started Expedition 33, I got through the prologue and I thought, this is incredible so far. I can't believe what I'm playing. I said, I think this is gonna be great. I reached the end of Act 1 and I thought, are you kidding me? What is this game? And I thought, wow, is this it? And then I reached the end of Act 2 and I thought, this game just keeps playing with me.
Right.
And then at the end, and I mean the very end, when you have to do some stuff, and I thought, this game really is doing something with me right now. After all I've been through, it asked me to do this. So it's great. Like, this game definitely 100% is my game of the year. And I mean, it's been great. From the gameplay mechanics, it's been phenomenal. From the music, extraordinary. The story, chef's kiss. And also, I mean, I mentioned this before, and I, not knowing how the game was going to turn out by the time Act 3 happened, but especially since the developer said that they are going to do something in the Clair Obscur universe again. I'm not certain how they do that exactly. I feel like there's potentially one thing, but I feel like that would really depend on how they view the ending of the game. And if so, I don't know how I would feel on that end, because I feel like it would really just kind of rehash this game, but we already know stuff, essentially. Yeah, and I feel like that's part of like what made the game so great in the first place, because of the fact that we didn't know everything. Like, we were just completely sideswiped by every plot element as we play the game. So I feel like if they are going to just follow the one ending as sort of like what happens, then I just feel like we lose any element of surprise on that aspect. But yeah, so it's been great. Oh, also, I will say this. I did play this with the Steam controller, and I don't know what the exact what it could have been the cause, but it does seem like trying to parry was a bit more responsive on this controller than on my DualSense controller, and I think I played it on my Xbox controller. I can't confirm, but I feel like it was a little more responsive. Maybe it was because I didn't have to press it down as much to get it to click, so I don't know if that's the reason why, but I just felt a little more responsive when I was doing that. So that was at least useful for me.
Okay.
But yeah, that's it, and it's been great. And I will probably play a little more just because I need to get some footage, and also because I do want to try out the New Game Plus as well, just to, especially with some of my new abilities. But
just make sure that you get the baguette before the before the gommage at the beginning.
Okay.
Because you only have the only opportunity you have to get the baguette weapon is if you go to the shop before you go down to the harbor for the gommage.
Okay.
So, because I missed that, and so I don't have any way to get it unless I do it with like mod or something. Okay, so I think first of all we need to talk spoilers. So I'm gonna warn everybody right now that there's going to be spoilers here. I will mark in the show notes exactly how long we talk about it, but I just think it's essential we talk about this. So I don't think we need to talk about everything because there's, this has been very spread out, but we do need to talk about the ending. All right, so first of all, I need to know, did you choose to go with Mael or Verso for your initial choice?
I was torn, but in the end, I chose Verso. Just because I thought, I think there's definitely a point that is made, especially seeing how the canvas really messed Alina up physically. So spending that much time in there takes a heavy toll on you. Additionally, I do realize that the last aspect of Verso's soul, which was the faceless boy, he was tired of painting, and so if Mael stayed, essentially, he would not get that rest from painting that he wanted. And I mean, and also I thought that maybe there is an off chance that Mael wouldn't return, as she said she would, which kind of proved to be the point in the other ending. But yeah, so I thought about it, and I said, yeah, I'm gonna go with Verso and do that, even if it destroys the canvas and everyone in there. I thought that might be the best thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I do agree with that. When I did it initially, I did choose Mael, and then I saw the ending, and of course it was just unsettling initially, and then of course when you see the painted Verso looking at her as he's getting ready to play the piano, and then her face like gets distorted a bit, and it's like, oh, so this is what's going to happen to her. And I mean, of course, once again, it just felt unsettling because it's like she restored all these people that died, and it just felt kind of off. And then, of course, understanding better about what was actually going on with this whole thing, and the fact that both, I always forget everybody's names, but that the father in particular, his goal was to end the canvas because of the fact that he wanted everyone to be able to move on, because they needed to move on. They needed to let Verso go because he was gone. And, that ultimately he was doing it because he loved them and cared about them. And, they'd been essentially like living the Inception life of, spending 50 years in this canvas, which, really hardly any time had actually passed in the real world. But it was time for them to move on. They needed to. And, like, it's hard because you love all these characters. But you also have to realize that in the end, these people aren't actually real. And, Alicia and Eileen, that's the mother's name. Is that right?
Yes.
They especially just needed to move on. And they needed to accept the reality of what things were, that Verso's gone. And I mean, Alicia, of course, obviously she's dealing with being disfigured and everything as a result of that fire, losing an eye and her voice and being severely burned and everything. But I don't know, it's one of those things that, like, it's had me I've thought a lot about this. I mean, especially like right after I finished it. But I will say though that I couldn't go back to an earlier save. At least I didn't have one close enough to where I could go back and redo it. So I just watched the Verso ending on YouTube, and I thought ultimately that was the right decision. That Verso was the right way to go about it. Because I mean, it's kind of like when you get absorbed in a game world or in a book or whatever, and you just have a hard time letting go of all these characters that feel real to you, but you ultimately have to leave this pretend world and come back to the real world and face reality, and you have to accept that things are not what they were before, and that, I mean, you can't just keep living this lie. You keep living a lie, it's not going to solve the real problems. You have to be able to move on after a certain point. And I mean, you and I have obviously both, dealt with the loss of a parent, and it can be really easy, especially in the midst of that, sometimes just to get lost in these fictional worlds, because it's, a coping mechanism and everything. But in the end, we have to face reality, and we have to find a way to move on past those things. And I mean, obviously, in our case, we both have our faith and everything, and um, family and all that to help us get through these things. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with having games or what have you to help you get through, process the emotions you're dealing with. But um, in the case of these characters, obviously between Aline especially, getting so absorbed in this world that she just refuses to let go of her son, and makes a painted version of him who ultimately ends up resenting the fact that he even exists, especially because of the fact that he knows that the only reason why he exists is because they're refusing to let go of this little piece of Verso's soul that's stuck in this world painting forever, unless the canvas gets destroyed. And then thinking back to everything about the paintress was never responsible for the gommage, that basically it was always that the father was, that his intention was, he was trying to get rid of it, and she was using whatever power she had to make it so that people of a certain age and younger could continue to survive. But after a certain point, I mean, each time it had to go down, and the age at which she could keep people still there. And I don't know, it's just like this whole story, it's so there's so much to it. It's like there's so much depth to it, and it really captures like human emotions, and just it makes you think a lot. And I feel like the only other game that's made me think this much was probably the Swapper. And the Swapper is a much shorter game, and the story is not quite as deep, but it still has like some really deep philosophical things to think about that really just make you think hard about it, even as a Christian. And even though in that case it's all theoretical. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this game is a masterpiece, and I mean, I'm with you 100%. This is game of the year for me as well. Granted, it's the one of the only games that I finished this year that was actually made this year, but or at least that was released this year. But still, yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I and like I said, I I almost was so close to going with Mael, but I just chose not to. And
Mhm.
it really, seeing her ending though, it really just shows that she does essentially end up the same as Aline.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, I mean, Verso essentially is like the painted family version of Renoir,
Mhm.
whereas he was essentially doing things that he didn't necessarily want to do, as like for example even fighting Verso, because he loves his son, but he kind of is compelled to do so and do other things he doesn't want to do because he's under the control of Aline.
Mhm.
And so that's sort of like what Verso is in at the end, at the end there. And so that's also sort of like why I would say they went if the writers went with the Mael ending as sort of canon and tried to make a sequel based off of that, it would really take away a lot, I would say, that of this element of surprise that we had, because we didn't
Mhm.
know that the world was fake in this game originally.
Right.
And so I feel like if it was a sequel, it'd be sort of like, oh, the character's now rising up against Mael, and it's like, well, I feel like we've done this before, but it's just not
Right.
as good as the first time around. So I don't know how they would make a sequel. I don't know if it's something they would do with outside of this particular
Right.
story, as far as like maybe it's going with them, with the painters against
Mhm.
the writers.
Right.
Because I mean, we know next to nothing about them except for the
Mhm.
fact that they were responsible for the fire in the first place. They also used Mael as well, and Clay has been fighting against them while everyone's been in the canvas. But so there could be something with that. We just don't know as far as right now.
Well, I know
And I
what it
definitely
what
agree. Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the next game's gonna be Expedition 60. You know, the one where everybody was naked the whole
Yes,
time.
yes. In fact, I was so confused because I heard something about Expedition 60 just being the best expedition team, and I thought, huh, that's weird. And I was also trying to figure out why haven't I seen their notes anywhere. I haven't seen their and so then when I finally went back to the to the final area, and then I saw, oh, here's a spot where there's something in the water, and I said, what's this? I said, oh, that's it. And I finally read through the thing. I thought, wow, these people were just hardcore.
They were hardcore. They did it naked, and they broke through the barrier to the paintress. Then they found
with
out
sheer
who the
muscles
what
alone.
was actually going on with her, and then they turned around and walked away.
Yeah, it's like almost made it too. They all like so close, but then just got gomaged. Like that's insane.
Yeah.
Think about. Oh man, that was good.
Yeah, if am I remembering right that they were swimming all the way back to Lumiere.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it was one person, because I think the rest of the team stayed behind to go and actually fight the real Renoir. I think they were gonna stay and go and
Oh yeah.
fight him,
Okay.
but he was gonna go back by himself to like just like let everyone know in case the others failed, like saying, "Hey, here's
Yeah.
the real threat here." But like he just
That's
barely
right.
missed it.
That's right.
He didn't get there in time, which is just incredible because he was right on the shorelines too that he could have made. So
And
it's
also
just when I
thinking
think
about the
that
fact that he would have been 60 doing that,
that's true. He was 60, and it was.
or
And
59 at least anyway. But yeah.
meanwhile, everyone else was just like barely getting by, as they were. All the younger teams were just getting wiped out every year. Um, and I do also agree with what you're saying, like with the ending and how about moving on. I thought about that as well. Which sort of like just like sort of that weird meta thing where you as the
Mhm.
player, you get engrossed with these characters, and that's sort of like why I kind of was trying to side with Mael, because we went through the entire game with these
Mhm.
characters, and we've
Right.
all grown to love them. And so at the end, it's like, all right, every character that you've been with, if you go with Verso, you're killing your entire team essentially, and also
Mhm.
the whole reason why you went on this journey to begin with. Um, so I guess it is kind of like that weird meta thing where it's just like, okay, yeah, you can, you know, keep doing this, or you can move on with
Yeah.
everything. So I definitely agree with that there. I feel like there's one other sort of spoiler thing that I wanted to ask you about. Uh, Okay, yeah. So regarding Simon with his story,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I went through his log twice because it didn't make sense. Was was the Clea he mentioned the painted one or
I
the
think
real
so.
one?
I'm pretty sure it's the painted one.
Okay. And he said it was the paintress that had tricked him, but was it really her or was it Renoir? Because he also
Oh.
mentioned Renoir as well, which is also really confusing me because I'm like, who's the
Mhm.
one that's actually controlling him? Who's the one who augmented him? That's like the part that I really kind of got
Yeah.
confused.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's been a while since I looked into all the lore about him, but I would definitely just dig into that because I don't remember.
Okay. But yeah, I think that's everything that I have regarding spoiler stuff.
All right. So, yep, that's the end of the spoilers. Of course, I'll mark that here in the show notes. Probably have it on screen as well. But going back, just one quick question about Satisfactory. Um, does your mouse have the ability to adjust the DPI on it?
Yes, it does, and I didn't do it initially just because it wasn't the best time, but later on,
Mm-mm.
I did adjust, and I even just also help out a little more. I put in a few weights in there just to
Yeah.
help out with that, so that
What
definitely helped
which
out.
mouse do you have?
It was the G502 SE Hero. Um,
Is that the
yeah,
wireless
I
or the
got that one.
wired version?
It's the wired one.
Okay, that's the same one I have.
Okay, yeah,
That's the one I've
definitely
been using
great.
for a long time. It's my favorite.
Yeah, and I actually got it because due to your recommendation. It
Gotcha.
was on sale. I said, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and get this here.
Yeah, the only downside to it is eventually it will get to a point where the clicker starts double clicking sometimes with each click, and that gets annoying. But it's a cheap enough mouse to where it's like, okay, you can replace it. I replaced mine, and then I still actually use the original one. I just use it on my laptop, and since I don't game with it as much, then it doesn't really cause me any problems. But yeah, that part's a little annoying. All right, good stuff. Okay, so um, as far as what I've been playing, there really haven't been a lot of games that I played very much. Basically, like two games that I played a fair amount, and then the rest of them were just dabbling more just for the testing stuff. Um, so first of all, played quite a bit of Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. Um, I have completed all of the Grand Prix at the 150cc equivalent. Um, and of course, I mean, the game is fantastic. As I've stated before, runs extremely well. I mostly played on Steam Deck, but I played a little bit on my desktop as well. The footage here is just from the Steam Deck. Thankfully, I got that all fixed and sorted out. But um, the one thing I will have to say is I kind of lost interest a little bit. And it's really just because I kind of felt like I'm not sure what else if I want to play it all that much because I don't really have that much to work towards. Yeah, I could do like go for some of the different challenges and that sort of thing. And I mean, the racing is really fun, but I also kind of feel like lack of motivation to continue, I guess you could say. Um, I'm sure that will change, partially whenever the new Grand Prix races come out because there's like I think 3 more that come available, and I guess there is still Mirror Cup. I haven't done that yet, so I could do that if I wanted to. But either way, I just was kind of in between on whether I wanted to do that for a bit, and also I was having game journalist reflex syndrome again, so I was starting to have some issues towards the end there, and that's part of the reason why I decided to stop a bit. But um, because of my desire to just have a little more to do, I ended up reinstalling Transformed, and I didn't play very much. I played probably like 30 minutes or something. I just messed around with a couple of the stuff in the world tour, some of the side challenges. The footage here is from doing a boost challenge, which I actually failed on because it was just I needed to record it this afternoon. I was getting some footage recorded. Didn't give it a whole lot of tries, but the game is still really, really good. And I love having just all the wide variety of random characters. Like the guy I'm playing as in this is from, I think, one of the Total War games or something. It's just like a Roman general or Roman centurion or something like that. I can't even remember what his name is, but anyway, it's just these additional challenges are just something fun, and because it's something different as well, it also makes it a little more interesting from that standpoint. I think the racing mechanics are probably still better in Crossworlds. I like the variety, the additional modes that are available in Transformed. So I hope that maybe in the future they'll add some additional modes that will give it some of that extra stuff, because if they do, that would be really good, because Crossworlds, like I said, the racing is superb in that game. It's just there's not enough variety for my taste, as you know, for playing single player stuff, and Transform just really has a lot of variety. So but yeah, I like I said, I played very little of that. I basically just played like 30 to 40 minutes, did a few races, and that was about it. But Crossworlds is still really good, and some of the track, well, the music is really good too, and like one of the tracks, which is one that's actually in the footage that I have here, is one that's based off of Sonic, whatever the new one, the new 3D Sonic is, the more recent one. Gosh, I have it and I can't even remember what it's called. Frontiers. Yeah, and the music in this one's extremely good. Plus, you know, it really is in all of them. Granted, I don't have the nostalgia that people who have played the Sonic games do, because I basically only played like the old 2D ones, and I've dabbled a tiny bit in some of the other more recent games, but not much. So anyway, it's still a very solid game. But the other game that I played a fair amount, I probably played mostly on Sunday afternoon, between getting home from church and going to our family group for Bible study, was Persona 3 Reload. And the footage I have here is just footage I recorded previously. It's nothing new, mostly because I haven't really done much of anything additionally. Like, I've fought an additional boss and got like a cutscene, and I was looking into how far I have, like about how long it takes to get through the DLC, and it looks like I'm anywhere from a third to halfway through, depending on whether what it takes to get the completionist route on this game. So I don't know, I'm just kind of dabbling with it here and there. Like, I enjoy it, but it also, the dungeon crawling on its own gets a little old at times, and I've contemplated lowering the difficulty because of the fact that I really just kind of want to get through it for the sake of the story. But I haven't done that so far, because there was only one fight that I lost and ended up having to redo. The unfortunate thing is that I hadn't saved in a little while, so I ended up having to redo like 2 or 3 hours worth of dungeon crawling to get back to where I was previously. But I made sure to save that second time before I went into that boss fight, and then got through without any problems. So but yeah, so that's it as far as the games I like played more of. I've gotten, like I said, very little gaming time, especially the past couple days, apart from the little bit of time I spent on Persona. But I did decide to test out a couple of games after I got my new graphics card. Actually, wait, no, I need to back up slightly. So on Friday, because it was payday, and I saw that the game was on sale and was only going to be on sale for a little bit, and it was for what I consider to be a good enough price, I grabbed Hellblade 2, because it was finally, normal price is $50. It was down to either $17.99 or $17.49. I can't remember which it was, but it was a good enough price to where I thought that that's worth it. I'll go for it. So I grabbed that, and the footage that I will be playing here is, unfortunately, the footage that I recorded before I upgraded my PC. It's really washed out, and because I wanted to have good comparisons between Steam Deck, my PC before upgrading, and then my PC after upgrading, it just didn't work out to where I could actually have the footage from before I upgraded in there. So the footage that's going to be shown here is just footage of the Steam Deck and my fully upgraded PC. So the top footage is on the Steam Deck, which is low settings, cap of 30 frames per second. It's not even really hitting 30. It's more like 28, 30 basically is the frame rate. And then the lower is my fully upgraded PC with all settings maxed out. And actually, no, I did lower one setting in order to get it to stay above 60 because this game is not well optimized as an Unreal Engine 5 game. It is a beautiful game, though. I mean, it is like visually impressive how great this game looks. But yeah, so once I upgraded, I was able to get it to, well, I should say before I upgraded, I lowered a few settings and I was able to get it to stay pretty consistently above 60. And it still looked really good. Like I was still pretty impressed with how good it looked and everything, but I only played like 30, 40 minutes. And then I installed it on the Steam Deck because I found out that you could get FSR 4 on Steam Deck. And FSR 4 definitely makes a difference in the visuals. Now, granted, I only tried it on quality mode, so because I wanted it to look as good as possible, just because this is supposed to be more of a visual showcase game, and it's not really one where 60 is absolutely needed, even though it's much, much better that way. So I just opted for that. FSR 4 does seem to work decently well. It's not the simplest setup, unfortunately, but it wasn't like complicated, just more complicated than using any other version of upscalers. But yeah, so then when I run it on my desktop with everything maxed out, native 1440p resolution, although I think I lowered either reflections or volumetric lighting. I can't remember which one it was. I mean, it still looks incredible. And it was able to maintain above 60 frames per second. So, very impressive from that perspective. Like I said, I played very little of the game. I've only played a little bit under an hour. But still, yeah. I do want to play this. I'm hoping... I don't know if I'm going to have time to play it over the weekend. If I do, I would pretty much expect... If I could get in a good stretch of time, like 5 or 6 hours, I could probably play all the way through the game, because I know it's not a long game. But, you know, we'll just kind of see what happens. Either way, cool to finally check that out. And I'm hoping that I can get into it reasonably soon. Just looking at it as, once again, a short game that I can just enjoy for how pretty it is and the story. That's really the only reason to play this kind of game. So gameplay-wise, it's not all that complicated. Light combat, some light puzzle solving, and very story-driven, atmospheric, and visually impressive. That's the extent of it. The other game I was able to test out was Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And this one was an interesting one. So, of course, previously when I played this game, 1440p, most of the settings maxed, but a few settings lowered. And I was getting an average, based on the benchmark, of about 85 frames per second. I decided to test out a couple different ways of running this game. First of all, I decided, you know what, I'm going to max out absolutely everything, and I'm going to do it at double the resolution. So instead of 1440p, I'm running it at 5K. That's right, 5K. And I ran the benchmark. Frame rate, I think on the low end would get down into like the low 40s, like I 0.1%. The actual average at the end of the thing with 5K, all settings maxed out, was 61 frames per second. And then when I ran it just at native 1440p, all settings maxed out, you know, completely, I mean, just regular 100% resolution instead of doubling the render resolution. It was running, it got, I can't remember what the actual average was at the end, but it was well over 100 frames per second. It's actually just about done with the benchmark here, so I'll be able to tell you shortly. 132 is the average. The minimum is 47, which that must be extremely low, and then the maximum was 211. So, extremely nice. I mean, the game was already running. I was perfectly happy with the way it was running before I upgraded, but it's very nice to see that well over 100 frames per second frame rate with everything maxed out. You know, not messing with any of the settings at all, apart from bumping everything up and turning off motion blur, obviously. But yeah, so I didn't actually play at all. I just really haven't had time. Or when I had time to play, I was mostly just playing Persona 3 Reload. But yeah, one thing though is, so earlier when I booted up help. Oh, you know what? Actually, I did boot up one other game for testing, and I forgot to include the footage here, so I'll just have to add it separately. I booted up Starfield briefly. I played for like 15 minutes, and it was really just checking to see what would happen if I maxed out all the settings. And I was getting, I think, between like 80 and 120 frames per second with everything maxed out at 1440p native. I turned off all upscaling and everything, so that was pretty cool. I was pretty happy about that. I don't know when I'll actually like really get back to Starfield, but it's still good to know that it does run very well with my new card, because I mean, like, it should, considering the fact that my card is ridiculously powerful, and it's not even the top of the line of the 24 gig cards by any stretch. I mean, it's not a 5090 or anything like that, but I mean, it's a 3-year-old graphics card, but it's still a lot more powerful than my 2080 Ti, which is a 7-year-old graphics card. So there's all that. But I think that was it for stuff I tested. Oh yeah, so what I was saying earlier is when I was booting up, it was either Starfield or Hellblade. I can't remember which was. It was probably Starfield, actually. Maybe it was Hellblade. I don't know. But anyway, I installed the AMD Radeon software. I can't remember what it's called. But it's a software that lets you do recording and stuff like that rather than having to use OBS. And when I booted it up, it looked like it was doing frame generation. I was like, no, turn that garbage off. I don't want this. And I was a little afraid at first. Oh, was the reason why my frame rate was so high in Valhalla because it had frame generation turned on? And at first I thought that maybe that was the case, but then I actually made sure it was turned off and ran the benchmarks again, and no, frame generation wasn't affecting it at all. It wasn't making any difference because it wasn't actually using it in Valhalla. And I don't think it was using it in Hellblade either. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was just Starfield that it popped up, giving me the option to use it. And I think that frame generation is something that, unless the game has frame generation built into it, it's not something you can even use for those games. So, and obviously Hellblade being one of those games that's made in Unreal Engine 5 and poorly optimized despite looking amazing, it doesn't do so hot. I will note, I didn't record any footage because I basically just tested it for like literally 2 minutes. Expedition 33 native resolution runs like garbage still.
Ooh.
It still is not even maintaining 60 frames per second. But that's native resolution. And considering the fact that I've always been running it with upscaling, it's still better than it was, but yeah, it's another Unreal Engine 5 game, obviously. I have to play around with the settings on that one to be able to get a better frame rate, but it's like, yeah, that's not so good. And I mean, I know it's because it's Unreal Engine 5, and I mean, I'm willing to give much more of a break to what's the name of the studio again? Sandfall Interactive. I'm willing to give them much more of a break because they're a small studio, but it really still would be nice if someone would better optimize their games. I mean, I think that one's still better than others because of the fact that at least with the upscalers, it can run fairly well, whereas and it still look pretty decent, whereas a lot of the other studios, even with the upscalers, the games are still running like garbage, and they're running worse than that. So, like, I'm sure if I used upscalers, I could get over 100 frames per second, but I was hoping to just do it native if possible, because the native is better. So, anyway, I played one more game, and this one I really didn't get to play very much because it just came out today, and that's Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles, which I only played on the Steam Deck. I basically just played through the prologue. Early impressions, I love it. Very, very early impressions. I never really played the original Final Fantasy Tactics. Like, I think I might have played through the prologue, and that was about it on a PS1. But I didn't play anything beyond that. And what I really like about this, initially I wasn't sure what I would think about them adding voice acting and stuff like that, but I actually really like it. And it's mostly because, for one, the voice acting reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy 12. And most of the voice acting in Final Fantasy 12 is excellent. Yes, Vaughn is not great as one of the main characters, but basically everybody else is great. And even, I mean, Vaughn's not bad. It's just, honestly, it's mostly just his appearance more than anything else. I hate his outfit, but otherwise, like, it's fine. But what I like about this is, for one, the voice acting reminds me a lot of that. The art style, because it came from this PS1 and 64 era, it reminds me a lot of games from that era. I mean, surprise, surprise. But it just gave me a lot of nostalgia from that standpoint. And then, of course, with it being set in Ivalice, which is the same place where Final Fantasy 12 is set, I have a feeling that there's probably going to be some crossover to a degree. Not like characters showing up or anything, because I don't remember where this takes place in terms of the timeline, even though they are in the same, they're both in Ivalice. But even just having, I think that there's actually going to be some themes that Final Fantasy 12 probably took from Tactics, some musical themes, and of course that'll bring nostalgia because I love the soundtrack for Final Fantasy 12. So yeah, the little tiny bit that I got to play, I enjoyed. And of course, I enjoy the turn-based strategy now more than I did for a while there after finally playing through Triangle Strategy. And I wasn't entirely sure what I would think about the smoothing out of character models and stuff because of how bad we've seen it be sometimes in the past, like with Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger and stuff, where it just looks awful. It looks like a Vaseline smear. Here it doesn't look like that. It just looks nice. Like, it's not the HD 2D thing, which of course I love that style as well. But I mean, like, it kind of feels like this is a modernization of N64 PS1 isometric style graphics. Like, honestly, I think it actually reminded me the most of the style of Harvest Moon 64, which was one of my favorites back in the day. In fact, of the Harvest Moon games, the only ones that I played and like really enjoyed were the original, the N64 one, really those two the most, and then the Game Boy Color one. And then everyone I tried after that I didn't like. And but this one, the visual style just reminds me so much of Harvest Moon 64, and that just gives me like huge nostalgia. I mean, it's ridiculous. And yeah, but then of course, I mean, the music, the little bit that I heard was great. The voice acting was excellent, and I'm really looking forward to playing it this way. I think what I would probably end doing is like I'll play through it this way because I mean, I bought the remaster. I might as well play this remaster as the remaster with all the new features. And then maybe someday I would consider playing the classic version that's included as part of it. Um, but yeah, it's like, I guess the major reason why I see it as I want to play the remaster, apart from liking some of the quality of life improvements, is that if I really want to play the older version of the game, I would just play the PSP War of the Lions that I already have. But because this one has all those new features, I might as well play it with the new features, especially because it seems like it's very well done. And like I said, little bit that I've heard so far, I've been very impressed with the voice acting, and it fits very well. So that's everything. That's all the stuff I've played, all the stuff I've tested. I don't know what, if any, time I'm going to get to do more testing over the weekend. I would say that there's a much greater chance I'm just going to be playing stuff on Steam Deck for a while. Especially because I forgot to mention my in-laws are coming in for a few days starting tomorrow afternoon. So I don't know how much video game time I'm going to get in the next week or so.
Okay. So question for Sonic Cross Worlds. Well, I mean, I guess this would have been mentioned. I know that. Well, actually, no. Let me step back for a second. This has been the only Sonic racing game that I've played apart from Sonic R. I know that Sonic Riders had a story mode.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it? Well, did Transformed have a story mode at all for that game or no?
No, not really. I mean, it has a career mode that's, single player, and you do a bunch of different stuff, but it's not actual story.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask if you thought that if it had some sort of mode or like campaign like that, if you thought it would have helped as far as with giving some kind of longevity, even if it was like, say, for different like a particular sort of mode for or storyline for different characters or not. Do you think that would have helped at all, or do you think all in all
Probably not, because honestly, I just don't care about the story in Sonic games. Like, to me, that's completely unimportant. It's gameplay that I care about, and like Transformed, what I like most about it is just all of the different stuff you can do in single player, because there really is just a lot. And Crossworlds, I mean, I think it still has potential to have more of that stuff, and like I said, the racing is super good. I mean, it's excellent. And there's, a lot of depth to what you can do with the racing. It's just, after you've completed all the Grand Prix, like, is there much purpose in going and doing it again? I mean, the only thing I will potentially do, because I remembered that I have it now, is the mirror Grand Prix tracks. But yeah.
Um, question for whoops. That is the wrong one there. Okay, sorry. So I guess a question for actually it's sort of like performance for Hellblade 2. Was the 30-ish frame rate with the, or did you test the frame rate with and without FSSR?
With FSR,
I'm sorry, yeah, FSR.
I think I did, and it was not drastically different. Yeah. I mean, like, I think the game runs better now than it did before they did the enhanced update. where before they put it on PS5 and then updated it for Steam Deck to make it technically verified because it runs without having to mess with the settings. Um, and this is a game that you don't absolutely need a higher frame rate, even though obviously it would be better. But it runs better now than it did when it first launched. So there's at least that.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I was just curious to know if how much FSR helped, if it was, say, barely struggling to get even 20, or if it was.
I don't know if it makes much difference in terms of the frame rate, but visually FSR4 does help a lot.
Okay.
I feel like when I turn it on, I mean, maybe I'm wrong on this, but FSR3, always has like those weird artifacts and stuff and like little random pixels like floating around. It just, disconnected pixels basically. And FSR4 doesn't seem to have that problem so much. Like it looks a lot better. Um, so at least there's that. But I don't know that I would necessarily play it on Steam Deck unless I just really wanted to play it and was willing to suffer through the bad frame rate. I mean, with this being such a short game, I probably wouldn't bother. I probably will uninstall it from the Steam Deck. I just wanted to test it out. Mostly because I wanted to test out the FSR4 thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, with Final Fantasy Tactics, you mentioned this isn't 2D HD. Is with the character models though, even if the backgrounds aren't, fully 3D environments and stuff, are the sprites though sort of like still the same as you would say from Octopath Traveler and
No, they're much more like the 2.5D, I guess you could say, almost. Because I mean, it's like very much at like an angled perspective, but it looks
oh,
more like 3D models that are cartoon 3D models. That's the only way I can think of to explain it. But it's not quite like the HD 2D where it basically is more or less flat models. I mean, it's not drastically different, I guess you could say. I don't know. It's not quite the same because I mean, of course, the HD 2D stuff is all Unreal Engine 4, and this is I don't know what engine this is using since it's not. I think they basically had to rebuild the game from scratch because they lost source code on it, and then they just made it look prettier for the HD or I mean for the remaster.
and I must have missed this. What was your performance like when the Steam Deck?
Oh, it's locked 60.
Oh, okay. Like
Yeah,
it's just like complete locked, or like you
yeah,
set it to locked?
it's capped at 60
Ah,
by default.
okay.
As far as from what I heard, I believe actually it was at 60 on the PS1 as well.
Oh, well, that's not too surprising because a lot of those types of games were pretty much running 60 anyway. Back in the days when we had good 60 FPS games as a standard.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's everything I have.
All right, good stuff. Well, let's get into the news, and it's later than I thought it was going to be when we got started, but we'll at least get through some of these stories here. So, first of all, let's go ahead and talk about the pricing for the Xbox ROG Ally and Xbox ROG Ally X. So we got the official pricing for the basic Xbox ROG Ally, which is like the original ROG Ally. It is $599, and then for the price of the Xbox ROG Ally X is $999. So basically 600 and 1,000 respectively. Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts, but I guess I should also point out the pre-orders already went live, and they basically said they've sold out. Though it seems like it's mostly scalpers buying them, but what are your thoughts?
This is it's worse than we thought. I mean, I know originally, I can't remember what the original price was gonna be, but it was definitely lower. I recall. At least that's what it was going to be. And then after the pricing was delayed, Microsoft said we're going to, gauge the market and see, get feedback and see if maybe we'll reconsider the pricing. And then they raised the pricing from what the league prices was going to be.
Yeah.
And I thought, are you so out of touch with people? But I mean, hey, maybe they knew what was going to happen because people bought them all up anyway, which I'm hoping that it is scalpers, because if people, I mean, I've seen some people talking about how much they were looking forward to and how happy they were to buy the Ally X, and I thought, you're part of the problem. But yeah, this is absurd. Like, the base Ally, I can get behind that being $600. I mean, it's in that ballpark estimate of handhelds and stuff, so I'm willing to accept that. But the Ally X, I feel like at most should have been $850, not $1,000. Like, that is absurd that we have handhelds going up, selling for that much. I mean, that is more than the price of some good graphics cards. I mean, didn't your graphics card cost less than this?
Yeah, my graphics card was $700.
Yeah, $700, and you get so much more performance than this GPU than the GPU in Ally X will ever have, which is just. And I know that making smaller devices is going to cost more to a degree, and also having specific parts also comes into play. But still, there's no reason why this thing should cost that much money. It's insane. Yeah, and I mean, I can't remember what it was. I think I saw a case or something like that. Like, there was a case. I think it was a case, somewhere, where the case for the Ally X cost $60, and I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? A case for $60? You can buy a Steam Deck, you can buy the LCD model, and it comes with a case. If I'm paying $1,000, that thing better come with a case. I better not have to pay $60 just to keep my handheld safe. It's ridiculous, and I mean, I know it's also using more powerful hardware, but still, at the end of the day, a handheld should not cost that much money. Like, if you're at that price point, I almost feel like you'd be better off just buying a gaming laptop, just because you're going to have something that is going to have comparably better hardware. It's going to be better at doing more tasks. It might not be as portable, but I still feel like at that point, if you want something that is technically on the go, just get that, or just save some money, get a cheaper Ally, get the regular Ally, or get a Steam Deck. Like, that's essentially where I feel about that. But yeah, it's just ridiculous, and it really just emphasizes how insane the Xbox, the next Xbox console, could be. If this thing's gonna be $1,000, how much is the full console gonna be? But yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah, this pricing is ridiculous. Like, the $600, okay, that's not terrible, I guess, but $1,000, that's just too much. I mean, at that point, like you said, you might as well just buy a laptop. You can get a decent laptop that's going to give you a lot more performance. Yeah, it's not going to be as portable, but you're going to be able to do a lot more with it. You have a lot more you can do with it, and realistically, especially if, like, the that special I I can't remember what the new Xbox Windows Store mode is supposed to be called. But if that's coming to the Windows Store already, you could basically get everything that you're looking for with a more powerful laptop. Yeah, it's less portable, but you'd have everything you need. You could take your existing Xbox controller, assuming you already have one, and either do it wired or wireless, and then there you go. You have your Xbox setup already good to go. You're going to be getting better performance, better visuals. You have a lot more freedom in what you can do with it, and it's just a better product overall. Now, that being said, I mean, while I am definitely not in favor of this price, and I think that it's bad, I also don't think it's necessarily like the device itself seems like it's a pretty decent device. It's just the price is too high for what you get. I personally think that the Steam Deck is a better option, especially the Steam Deck OLED, because you could spend... I mean, yes, you're not going to get as high of a refresh rate. It's not as strong, but you're getting a better screen. You're going to be able to play the majority of those games. Yes, if you are coming from Xbox, you may have to deal with a little more headaches, and from that standpoint, like, I get it. Not necessarily wanting to go that route. But you could install Windows, and if you install Windows, then you could potentially get a similar experience. It'd just be a little bit less strong, and you're spending a lot less money. So, I don't know. I mean, people who choose to go for this, more power to them, and I hope that this is something that gets more people into PC gaming, because essentially that's the direction Xbox is going anyway, is, focusing more on the PC side of things. But they're still going to make dedicated hardware. It's just going to be more like a PC than it's ever been before. And, essentially it's just going to be an Xbox branded PC. But that's what consoles are, is they're just pared down, locked down PCs. That's what they are. With slightly customized operating systems. And I mean, Xbox has always run on a modified version of Windows anyway. From the first Xbox all the way until the most recent one. Oh. Like, I don't fault Xbox fans for buying this. I just kind of wish that people would push back on this, because if they would, then they'd probably be able to get a better price instead of having to spend $1,000 on it. But like, I've seen some videos showing scalpers basically are selling these things for like anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500. They're trying. Oh. Well, they're trying to sell them for that amount anyway. And I hope that the scalpers just completely get screwed over on this, because it would be hilarious to just be like, it's your own fault. You're the one who thought that you could do this and get away with it. And I wouldn't be surprised if scalpers are the major reason why it's as sold out as it has. Because while there are Xbox enthusiasts who are very interested in this, and it's a good, basically dipping their toes into PC gaming kind of thing, especially because of the fact that with Play Anywhere, however many titles there are like that, there's a lot of games that they'll be able to just bring over. Yeah, it's the PC version, but considering the fact that most of these consoles aren't playing the older games natively anyway, I mean, they're using a translation layer or emulation. It's basically the same deal. It's just you get a version that has more options, which is better for you. You get to experience the greatness that is PC gaming. But, I mean, if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. And, every one of us has to start somewhere. There are very few people I know of who make the switch to PC, they go all in right away, and then they never look back. Most of the time, the people who go hardcore, spend a bunch of money right away to get into PC gaming, they fall off so fast, because they expect it to be a certain way. They expect it to be as simple as consoles and everything else, and it ends up being more complicated initially. And because they want it so simple, they're not willing to do any work whatsoever, they quickly abandon it and decide that they're never going to do PC gaming again. And they're like, oh, I tried PC gaming, for 30 seconds, and it was too much. And, I had to spend a minute in the menus messing with settings. Oh, how dare you? How dare you? Honestly, that's what I've seen a lot from people I know who were console gamers who tried out PC gaming. They were in it so briefly, they gave up so fast. And it's like, dude, you need to you made so many mistakes with this. It's like, it's one of the things, whenever I get around to making that video of the mistakes to avoid when going into PC gaming, one of the first things I'm going to point out is that you should never try going all in all at once. Don't try rebuilding your whole console library on PC. Instead, go for older games. Go for games that you can't get on your consoles anymore that you maybe wanted to try out, because you can get older games for way cheaper on PC. Start with that. Dabble with it here and there. Maybe try out some emulation, that sort of thing. Just keep it simple to start. Do some things that you can't already do on consoles. And then, over time, you may find, oh, I really like what PC has to offer here. And then you may decide to get more enthusiastic about it and spend more money and build your own PCs and all this other stuff. And it's great. But don't start by trying to dump everything in all at once, because if you're not built for this, if you're not willing to make a little bit of extra effort, you are going to have a bad time. You're going to abandon it so fast. That's going to be ridiculous. You're going to abandon it faster than a fat person abandons dieting after the beginning of the new year. And that's speaking from experience in some cases. Okay, so that's all I got on that topic. Any other thoughts?
No, sir.
All right, you want to talk about Bowser leaving Nintendo?
Yeah, so after, all these years, Mario finally gave Bowser his pink slip. But no, Doug Bowser, the CEO or president of Nintendo of America, is retiring at the end of this year after 6 years after Reggie Fils-Aimé retired in 2019. He sent out a statement earlier this week. It was earlier this week, saying, "One of my earliest video game experiences was playing the arcade version of Donkey Kong. Since that time, all things Nintendo have continued to be a passion for both me and my family. Leading Nintendo of America has been the honor of a lifetime, and I am proud of what our team has accomplished in both business results and the experiences we've created for consumers. Now it's time for the next generation of leadership, and Devin's track record speaks for itself." And she is going to be the new CEO, Devin Pritchard. She is an exceptional leader, and her promotion is a testament to her strong performance and strategic contributions to the company's growth. I have full confidence that she will guide the company to even greater heights. And she's been with the company for, I think, 19 years, it was stated. She's had various roles throughout, and so she'll be taking over. I think there's also one... Oh, yeah. I don't know who this is exactly, but Satoru Shibata is going to be taking over as CEO. Actually, no. Yeah, in addition to being the managing executive officer and corporate director of NCL, which I think is Nintendo... I can't remember what it was. Nintendo Company Limited. And yeah, so that is pretty much the main gist of things. I have a couple questions, really, but before I get into my questions, I will let you have your statements about this.
So, honestly, I'm not really sure what I think about this, but I've lost so much faith in Nintendo, in terms of, just the way they run everything and the way they've treated customers, that honestly, I'm not really sure if it's any better, whether Doug Bowser is still there or not. and the new gal who's replacing him. Like, I didn't know she'd been with Nintendo for a while. I haven't looked much into her, but there's like some mental red flags there, just based on some things I've heard about uh, how she looks at the world, I guess you could say. But whether or not those are just fear mongering, from the typical people who say anytime, a woman is involved that, oh, it's the end of the world, basically. Or actually legitimately like she's awful. I don't know, but at the same time, I'm not really sure, even if she is as awful as people have said, which, once again, I have no idea. I haven't looked that much into her. I'm not really sure she can do any more damage to Nintendo than they have already done. I mean, being involved in America, like, she might be able to have something to do with, like, some aspect of localization, but there's already been some activists within localization who have done some stuff there. So is that going to change anything dramatically? I don't know. And she wouldn't necessarily have any influence over what they do in Japan in terms of how they make the games. So, because I mean, like, I don't think Reggie or Doug Bowser had any influence in that whatsoever. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I remember Reggie saying after the fact that after he had left, that there were things that he tried to tell them and they basically just don't listen because they don't have to. So who knows, what if anything would happen in the future from that standpoint. I mean, I guess good for Doug Bowser moving on. Beyond that, I have no idea what to think. I'm not going to pass judgment on the new president, since I don't really know anything about her. I don't really trust much of anyone when it comes to Nintendo these days. I just don't trust Nintendo, period. So we'll see what, if anything, positive or negative happens either way. That's all I got.
Yeah. So I was actually surprised that it's been 6 years. To be honest, I thought to myself, he's retiring already. It's just like, it seems like he just started.
Yeah.
And then when it said it's been 6 years since Reggie retired, I thought, huh. And I thought about it and I realized that kind of speaks poorly, I guess, on Bowser in a sense, because it's like, well, what have you done during these past 6 years?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't feel like he's really had much of an impact on the company. I mean, Reggie, I can definitely say, during his time with Nintendo,
Mm-hmm.
you knew he was there.
Oh, yeah.
It felt like, he was the representative for the American branch of Nintendo,
Yeah.
and you knew him. When there were events going on, he was there. Especially when he was working and collaborating with Iwata, and that definitely played a part in those two had great stage play, great stage presence together.
Yeah.
So the time they spent together definitely made for some memorable moments, and whatnot. So those two were legends in their own rights, but really doesn't feel like Doug Bowser really did much of anything while he was president. So, which is like, all right, so long, I guess. And so, I mean, like you said, the new president, she probably can't do any worse, but I mean, I don't know. And one thing I feel like is, based on one video clip I saw, I don't know if she's the type of person to be, I guess, in this aspect, a type of PR person. Just because I think it was for the Switch, it was a Switch 2 presentation or something like that. And it didn't seem like she knew too much about the hardware. It seemed like just certain things is like, yeah, that doesn't really seem like something to really be hyping up. It doesn't seem like anything like you would really be hyped up about, essentially. So I don't know. It seems like she might be more of a business person and less
Mhm.
of a, I guess, gaming person. You could
Yeah.
say. So in that aspect, I really don't know how it feels like on that end, things could definitely be. It won't. It might not be that great. Essentially. So yeah. Um. Obviously, we'll just have to wait and see. But as you said, I'm not. I don't really trust Nintendo anyway, so it's not like I'm all. Oh no, all hope is gone. My Nintendo's gone. It's more like, well, I guess I'm glad I'm not in that boat right now.
Yeah.
As far as being a part of a major part of the fan base, um, but yeah. So I mean, I know it might just be nostalgia on my end, but I really just feel like the Reggie era was the best era.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as just like with presentation and how Nintendo interacted with the consumer base, it
Mhm.
felt great during those days. And I mean, sh- I mean, I probably, well, yeah, I wouldn't know. I don't know who the president before Reggie was, and I feel like if I go back and play one of the older games, I might recognize the name. But I feel like any other name that I would recognize or that I know off the hand who isn't Reggie, who worked on Nintendo, like probably in the N64 days, is Bill Trinan. Like that's the only name
Yeah.
I can remember and recall, and that was just and he worked with localization. Um, but yeah, so I don't know. I just feel like yeah I don't know. I mean, Doug Bowser did what he did, but I feel like he had as much impact on this company as much as Reggie did when he was helping GameStop. And his time was less uh he spent less time there on their board trying to help them out of
Yeah.
their sinking ship. But yeah, that's all I have.
The one thing I thought about, if the new gal is in fact more of a business person and isn't into video games, which I mean that isn't necessarily a problem. It kind of just depends on how much she's truly business focused versus activism focused, from that standpoint. But if she is more business focused, maybe she could be someone who influences Nintendo to start putting their games on other platforms. I don't think that'll happen, but
Yeah.
I would welcome it if it did. It'd just be like, hey, Nintendo, you know, you could have done this all along. People would have bought your games. Yeah, the prices are. We might wait for discounts, but we'd be willing to buy your games on PC happily. Um, or you know, you put them on other platforms in general. Put them on every platform. You make a lot more money, and you make a lot of people happy. It's a win-win. But obviously, that wouldn't please both Nintendo fanboys and console exclusivists that are obsessed with the idea of exclusives and think that that's the way it needs to be, which we won't get back into that topic. But yeah, so I'm not expecting anything positive one way or the other. Honestly, like I'm not even sure how much I'm going to be still buying Nintendo stuff going forward. Like I'm pretty sure I told you that I canceled my Mario Galaxy pre-order, so I'm not getting those. At least not right now. I'm thinking that if the collection goes on sale for like $50, I'd be willing to spend that. I think $50 is worth it, for the physical. But if not, or if like the physical one just basically disappears, goes completely out of print and all that, and I don't have the opportunity to get it, then I'd probably just grab Galaxy 2 when it goes on sale, and at least, you know, for enough of a discount to be worth it. Because I do want to play Galaxy 2, but like I tried booting it up on my PC the other day, and getting the controller set up was being a little more annoying than I wanted it to be. And I was too tired to want to mess with it, so I didn't mess with it. But, and I know I'm getting Metroid Prime 4. I did keep my pre-order for that, and I am getting that for sure. Well, assuming I'm still living at that point, which, God willing I will be, but nobody knows. So, but apart from that, like, I'm not really excited about anything from Nintendo right now. Like, sure, if the theory that people have out there that Mario Galaxy 3 is going to be coming, or that we'll eventually get like Luigi's Mansion 4, yeah, those are games I would definitely want to play, but I'm not going to spend $80 on either of those games. Like, maybe 70, at least on like Mario Galaxy 3, potentially, but maybe not. I don't know. It's just kind of like I've lost a lot of enthusiasm for them, and I keep going back and forth on, should I just sell my Switch 2 and maybe start selling my physical Switch games and just give up on Nintendo, say I'm done with you guys. It's not like I don't have other games to play anyway, but at the same time, I know how much in the past, like, I've sold off my old hardware and then regretted it later, which is why I've been so hesitant to do it. But anyway. All right. I got nothing else on that. You want to blah, blah, blah. Is there anything else you had on that?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Since we're running kind of short on time, just kind of briefly go over this thing about EA going private. So, the short version is that EA has sold a bunch of stocks, essentially, and sold to a private investing firm, primarily Saudi Arabia. There's like some involvement with, I think, Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, and I can't remember who else is involved. I don't have the information pulled up. I'm honestly just kind of trying to speed through this since
Silver
it's late.
Lake is the other one.
Silver Lake, okay, yeah. But yeah, basically EA is, I guess my understanding was that they took out like a pretty significant loan in order to make this work, and now they're going to have to make that profit in some way. But with it being sold Saudi Arabia, or part of it having to do with that. I'm sorry, I'm just like super unfocused right now. Can you take over at this point?
Yeah. So EA's had a deal. I can't remember if it's the beginning of their next or not their next fiscal year. I think it's next fiscal year, which will be, or not the next one. It's going to be in fiscal year 2027 for them. That's when the deal finalizes. So I think there's still like a year left where they're being public, and the deal closes at that point. I don't recall what the main impact of this is, but I know that mentioned that this is a leveraged buyout. I know there's supposed to be some impact on it, as far as like how that debt's being repaid. I know some cases I've heard it can go poorly, but it doesn't have to be poor. So that's pretty much the general stuff there, and everything else is speculation at that point. So what are your thoughts on this entire situation and what could come out of it?
Yeah, so I need to spend some more time researching this, to be honest. I listened to some stuff about this earlier today, and the one thing that definitely brings up some potential concerns, with the what's the word I'm looking for? The loan that they had to take in order to make this happen, essentially. This is something where sorry, my brain's not working. With this debt that they're taking on in order to make this happen. it very much increases the chance that they're probably going to find whatever way they can to make as much money off of their consumers as possible. And so basically that means probably a whole lot more microtransactions, various scummy monetization beyond what they already do. Those things definitely concern me. Of course, this is also consolidation, which is there's some potential issues with that. There's been lots of consolidation around all over the place, even though thankfully we've at least seen, it seems like the Activision Blizzard thing hasn't really negatively affected the industry in general. But yeah, I'm not really sure whether or not it's going to be any good. Honestly, I haven't cared about EA games in a long time. Like, honestly, the last EA game I bought that I legitimately cared about and still really love is Mirror's Edge Catalyst, and that was almost 10 years ago. Before that, I think the last one that I really cared about was the Mass Effect trilogy, and I bought it and I played it, and then I got the EA version of the Legendary trilogy for free from Amazon Prime, and then I bought it on Steam for like $6. So, I mean, there's just I don't care about most of their games. I have the Crysis games, but those ones were also dirt cheap when I got them, and some of them I think I got for free as well. So like, I mean, obviously it's not going to be beneficial to anybody who's buying games from them. There's potential things that could be positive in terms of the type of stories they're telling in their games and that sort of thing, but I don't really trust them to not monetize the heck out of their customers. So that's kind of the gist of my opinion on the matter.
Yeah, I definitely agree that with how they're handling things, paying back their loan is a big deal. I mean, in addition, I mean, they said they weren't going to be laying people off. They were going to try to keep his people, but you know, as we've seen with the Activision acquisition, as we've seen with the Bethesda acquisition, people were still going to get laid off, regardless. So I think it's going to be a matter of time. I think that maybe certain people might be getting laid off, especially like you said, with it being Saudi Arabia. You know, certain story stuff might be getting cut out. Something I also saw today, and this is also because I had to do this type of research for work, is the fact that EA might be leaning into the use of AI and stuff in their games. That's something that they could be doing, which would also possibly lead into more layoffs, because as they try to cut costs, they'll try to lay off people and just sort of like replace them with AI, or just downsize teams and use AI in those capacities. But I also agree that they will definitely try to monetize things as much as possible. And unfortunately, the one thing that I would wish to come out of this, which I still highly doubt, and I feel like because of the fact that it is being, because of the consolidation, it's probably more likely not to happen, is them getting rid of the use of EA Origin. Because if they cut out that requirement, I would purchase Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order immediately.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that I will not get a game that needs another launcher just to use it, especially for single player games. But so because of that, I'm not touching it. But if this acquisition results in them saying, hey, we won't bother using EA Origin, or we don't feel like you need to have that requirement, immediately, as soon as that requirement's gone, I'm immediately buying that game and playing it, because it definitely has been something that I've wanted to play, but I just don't want that launcher on my computer.
Yeah, understandable.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't expect things to change too much on one end. Maybe things might be a little worse as far as monetization goes. But I feel like maybe on some ends things will change. I feel like definitely within the company things are going to change quite a bit. But we won't really see that happen for at least a year or so once the deal finally finalizes.
Yeah. All right. Good points. Yeah, I hope you're right about that, because that would be great if they got rid of the launcher. Just improve performance on games and one less thing to deal with. So that would be nice. I do need to test out Jedi Survivor with my new card as well. See how that does. Except I'm sure it's going to run even better than it already does, and I was pretty happy with performance on that. Still a bunch of games I need to test out. But we'll do that as time allows. But anyway, I think that we are going to have to end on that as far as topics for tonight. So let's go into our recommendations and dissuasions. Start us off.
All right, a couple recommendations from me. First one is going to be, I've tried this this week, and it turned out pretty well, but I think I'm gonna modify it slightly. That is to, I think if you are using a pasta, depending on the type of sauce you're using, cook your pasta in the sauce instead of just boiling it in the water completely. Because it's something I had seen somewhere saying like if you cook it in the pasta, you cook pasta in the sauce, it really helps to absorb the flavor, and it also some of the starch and stuff that happens within the water. Some of the results doesn't really clump together when you're cooking it in the sauce itself. So I tried that with some seafood scampi I was making. Turned out pretty well, but similar to you with the ramen, it absorbed so much liquid that I had to sort of like make some more sauce essentially just to make sure that it cooked long enough without absorbing everything.
Yeah.
So I feel like depending on the sauce you're making, you might need to partially cook the pasta and then put it in the sauce and then cook it the rest of the way. But I think that cooking in the sauce definitely enhanced the flavor a whole lot overall. Second recommendation I have is for Satisfactory. If the game is crashing on you constantly, I would recommend changing it. I think the default setting is for using DirectX 12. I haven't tried it in Vulkan yet, but I would at least recommend trying it in DirectX 11. Even though it's no longer supported in the game, it stopped all the crashes that I was having before, so I definitely recommend changing the setting to that. But that's it for recommendations.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, the pasta thing, I've done something similar to that. There was one I had come across where it suggested, rather than boiling the pasta, soaking it for a while in water, and then after you soak it, then you cook it in the pasta. I did not like the way that came out. It just was, the texture of the pasta was weird, and it didn't work the way I thought. The hard cooking I could definitely see working pretty well though. It's like I know, for example, whenever I make like mac and cheese, for example, I always undercook the pasta. Like it says like cook it 9 to 11 minutes for the macaroni. I'll do it for 7 minutes, and then it'll get cooked the rest of the way in the sauce. And it's like usually, even when it comes out, like it's very al dente, and then by the time it's cooked up a little bit more in the sauce, it's like perfect. At least until it sits for a while, and then it gets, as mushy as you would expect. But yeah, I could see that working if you at least partially cook it, partially boil it ahead, and then cook it the rest of the way in the sauce. I could see that working pretty well. So good stuff. All right, well, my recommendations. First of all, if you are going to get a new GPU and you're upgrading your case, if you're upgrading your GPU from an older one, make sure that the case that you have has enough room to fit the new GPU, because otherwise you could be in a really bad position. Thankfully, I had another case and I was able to just swap out the parts, but it was a lot of work to do that. And while technically it would have been easier to just buy a new case, I also would have had to wait until the new case arrived, and it's like, I already have a case that'll work. I might as well just swap out the parts. And I mean, everything's worked out because of that. So that's what that is. My other recommendation is, if you want to make soft-boiled eggs, whether you're doing them for ramen eggs or otherwise, if you, at least, even if you're just testing it out with one, do it for longer than the directions tell you to, because more likely than not, there's a decent chance, especially depending on elevation and all that sort of stuff, that could impact it, but you may end up finding that the amount of time it tells you to cook it is not enough, and like I did. And if you find out that it ends up getting overcooked, then you just cook it a little bit less the next time. I mean, if you want, you could do one egg at a time, and that way you can, or do one egg, test it out, see how it comes out, and then if that comes out right, then do the other eggs that way, and if it doesn't, adjust your cooking time accordingly. But yeah, so yes, and then if you're doing it for the ramen eggs, make sure to marinate them overnight, because that way you actually get the flavor you're looking for, instead of just doing it for a couple hours and then they don't really absorb the flavor much. So yeah, that's what I got for recommendations. So what are your dissuasions?
My first dissuasion is going to be, do not use OpenShot if you're going to make long slideshow videos. It's probably fine if you're doing something that's about 5 minutes, but I feel like after 10 minutes, it's really starting to be a problem, and rendering stuff is just a bit of a hassle. Mm-hmm. At least from the experience I've had. Maybe if you're using something that is a bit more powerful than a laptop, it's fine, but just from the experience I've had, it just has not been good. And there might be some settings also that I need to also mess with as well. And I haven't made a slideshow before in OpenShot, but it just wasn't doing too well. My next dissuasion is going to be, to not use DirectX 11 if you are having performance issues in Satisfactory. That's one thing I did notice, is the fact that my frame rate dropped dramatically from being about slightly over 100 frames per second to dropping to 60 frames per second, with some dips into the low 50s. So if the frame rate is definitely something that you really would like to have high, I would definitely dissuade you from switching over to DirectX 11. I'm gonna trying Vulkan, because that might have better performance. It's still experimental, but I think so far I don't know if I would want to stick with DirectX 11. But yeah, that's my dissuasion there. So use it if you're having crash issues with DirectX 12. Don't use it if you do not like the performance.
All right, good to know. All right, my dissuasion is, do not boil ramen noodles in broth when doing homemade ramen. Just cook them separately and then add them to the broth after the fact. That will be much better. I mean, if you cook them a little bit after, like if you cook them most of the way separately and then just toss them in for like the last minute, it's probably fine. But if you cook them fully in the broth, you're going to have a bad time, because it's going to absorb all the broth. You're not going to have any broth, so then it won't really be ramen anymore, and it could potentially just end up with the noodles being way too salty, or, what have you. So that's my dissuasion. All right. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. No new videos so far, but now that I finished Expedition 33, I am in the process of working on my full video review. It's going to be spoiler free, but I'll try to get in as much as I can about as far as how I feel about the game within that review. I'll try to have it out within the next week or so, but I'll have to manage that within the schedule of things right now. Other channel I also have is Justin's Bible Blog. That's at Justin's Bible Blog. I think I put out something this past week. Can't remember exactly, but yeah. So I'm gonna have something probably about every 2 weeks or so on that channel as well. But yeah.
Sounds good. I will check and see. I haven't been able to keep up on my YouTube stuff very much, so I haven't seen anything pop up about that channel. But that doesn't mean it hasn't shown. It just I haven't seen it. So anyway, in my case, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at the Frozen Gamer 87. Nothing new has been put up since the Why I Love PC Gaming video / series, and the next thing that's planned, I don't know if I'm going to have time to record it this weekend. I'm hoping I will, is just putting together the video review for that controller. I already put up my written review on Amazon, so it is up there, but the video version has not been put together yet, so I still need to do that. Otherwise, I have multiple other projects that are in the works. I've done some stuff for them, but I just haven't made much of any real progress, and I don't know what kind of time I'm going to have, especially this weekend, because my in-laws are going to be around. I don't think I'm going to really get much chance to work on stuff. So there's that. Then there's, of course, the YouTube channel and Rumble channel for the podcast. That's YouTube at the Orange Box Podcast. Rumble, it's not a custom URL, but you can still find it there. Every Friday, 7 a.m. Central Time, the video version of the podcast goes live, barring any technical issues. And I feel like there's something else I need to say about the video version, but I guess not. The audio-only version goes live every Friday at 12 a.m. Central Time on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, etc. And that is, of course, exactly the same content, just without the video side of things. And then I have my YouTube cooking channel, which is Not Authentic But Delicious. That's YouTube at NABD Cooking. Hasn't been anything new in quite a while, but there are somewhere between 30 and 40 recipes up on the channel, all good stuff. So definitely feel free to check that out if you're looking for some noob-friendly cooking. Some great recipes, and highly rated by those who have tried my cooking. But yeah, that's it. Other than if you want to contact us, you can send us an email to theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com. You can write us on Twitter /X at theorangeboxpod. You can comment on the video version of the podcast. Any episodes there, either on YouTube or Rumble. And we'll either read your comment on the show or respond to you, depending on what it is that you have to say. And yeah, I believe that's everything. So, last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, don't buy shares in EA, I guess. Orange Box Podcast, out.